What's up, guys? This is a crippler, Chris Lieben, and you're listening to Story of the Fight.
Will, we're back to normal. We got video recording. That's good. The only thing is that no fights this weekend.
No, nothing really to cover.
I went to some local fights on Thursday. There's an exciting up-and-comer. You should look him up. Name is Landry Ward. Looks like the real deal, man. Real deal.
That's his nickname? Landry the Real Deal Ward?
No, actually, it's the Lone Star Kid. LSK.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, and man, I was shocked because he brought a crowd. Like, there was chanting going on. LSK. Dude, it was rocking over here. It was at Billy Bob's in Fort Worth.
Billy Bob's.
Which was an interesting
very
venue.
Texas.
Yup. And but yeah, Landry Ward phenomenal. Your boy Kevin Holland was there.
Allegedly.
Might have gotten in a little scuffle.
Allegedly. Landry Ward looks like he's out of Sanford MMA. That's sounds like the real deal to me.
No, dude, and he looks really good, man. Talk about a lanky guy, and he knows how to use his distance really, really well, and he looks really well-rounded.
Yeah.
He just reminds me a lot of the younger fighters that are coming up that isn't necessarily focused on one specific discipline, and they're just good everywhere, man. I've seen this kid on the ground. This is my third time watching him fight already. And, you know, whether
Have you seen all of his pro fights?
Yep, 3-0. Whether it's a submission game or not, you know, his striking, like I said, he's the real deal. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see this kid go big time here pretty soon.
Nice. That's
the
exciting.
only fights I got to watch this week, though.
Yeah, allegedly.
But it was fun. Allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly. But, yeah, man, so I was thinking, in the spirit of our friend Rich the Casual. Rich, have you watched any more fights?
I thought there weren't any fights this week.
Oh, okay, well, you know, YouTube or something, dude, you know? Like
you always go back.
Yeah, but in the spirit of our friend Rich the Casual, I thought, why not put together the ultimate card? So next time that there's no fights in the weekend, we can give this to Rich the Casual. Maybe any other, listeners that are just getting into MMA are like, well, what other fights should I watch to really help me grow my love for mixed martial arts? So today I thought we could put together the ultimate card. What do you think?
Yeah, are we putting together an ultimate card, or are we each presenting a card?
Well, you're presenting a card. That's your ultimate card. I'll give you what my ultimate card is, and then from there, Rich the Casual can pick and choose which fights he might want to watch. He can build
his own card.
He can build his own card off of our cards, off of our ultimate.
Or
card.
he can just watch both of our cards too.
Why not? I mean, you know,
I'm sure there's going to be some common ground on some of these.
It might take him less time to watch our ultimate cards than it did for him to watch Lord of the Rings extended versions.
It will.
So why not?
Yeah.
All right. You want to get us started with the undercard? So we're each undercard 3 fights.
Yeah.
Then the main cards 5 fights.
Okay. So we're doing 3 fight prelims, 5 fight main card.
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Get us going.
Okay. So my dip your toe in the water on my prelims is a heavyweight bout, just to catch some eyes, you know what I mean? You know, set the stage. And it's 2015, a fight on UFC 187, Rumble Johnson versus Daniel Cormier. Andrei Arlovski versus Travis Browne.
Ooh.
Do you remember that one?
I sure do. I definitely remember that one.
Yeah, nothing too crazy. Well, it's pretty crazy, but it's not like you're going to get drawn into some crazy long fight with any stalling whatsoever. It's just 2 heavyweights swinging and banging, and just kind of showing you. It shows you, especially at heavyweight.
Swinging and banging?
Swinging and banging. All it takes is one.
Clicking and clacking.
At heavyweight, clicking and clacking, all it takes is one. You know what I mean? At heavyweight, so it just kind of sets the stage and says, gets your attention. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Makes you it's a perfect fight at the start for me because it's going to make you watch the rest of the card knowing that you have to watch every second. You know what I mean? Because every second matters. Every punch lands. That matters. It just makes you focus, you know? Because if you turn away and look at this fight, it's a different fight when you come back to it. So you have to just be glued, you know? That's going to hopefully carry through the rest of the card.
I love that one. And it's crazy that you started off with the heavyweights. Because your boy started off with heavyweights over here as well.
Swinging and
Mine, clicking and clacking, dude, is Nogueira versus Couture.
Ooh.
So this is an old school one, right? And for me, it's like, let me present you with a couple of legends in mixed martial arts. Some folks that had been doing it for a very long time, you know, and I, just like you, I say that I love watching heavyweight fights.
Yeah.
And this is, there's just pins and needles, right? You're sitting at the edge of your seat because, like you said, you know, any shot can end it. But the nice thing about this is we got Couture, who's a phenomenal wrestler. We have Nogueira, who's a jiu-jitsu practitioner. And you see heavy strikes going back and forth. But then it's not just that, the grappling as well, which is going back and forth. So it's like, you know, a little dabble of some striking. Let me sprinkle in a little grappling. And it's just a perfect recipe here for what was a really good heavyweight back and forth fight. One of my favorite fights for me of all time that I can remember. Two legends, man. Two legends. So I like your first one. Both started off with the heavyweights. What's your second?
Yeah, so I was like, we talked about it, and this is going to be one of those things where, I mean, we had to pick 8 fights, which there's so many insane fights that are like required reading almost, you know, like you have to go back and watch if you never saw them. But so it's super hard to pick just 8 fights. And I was trying to think, like, am I trying to just show my 8 greatest fights? Am I trying to show the evolution of the sport throughout the card as you watch it?
This was hard, huh?
How it's changed. Yeah, I almost went that route. And then the more I thought about it, it's like, if the goal of this is to introduce somebody to the sport, I feel like we have to set the stage of the sport first, and then they can go back and watch the evolution and really appreciate some of the things. Now that they've seen these fights, they can go back and appreciate. So my next one, so like I said, first one.
Well, I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's so funny because I went through the same thought process last night, laying in bed. And I'm like, why am I taking this so seriously right now?
I know,
like, this is for the podcast.
Dude.
Like, I'm just like I'm trying to save mankind right now with my with this fight card that we're putting together. This, sorry.
So the next one, first one, heavyweight swinging and banging. You know what I mean?
Clicking and clacking.
Nobody's gonna dislike that. Everybody wants to see that.
Yep.
A lot of people. It's better now, but for a long time. Once someone landed a takedown, people lost interest. A lot of people would be like, "Oh, I just want to see it just bleed," you know, stand and bang, you know. But
that's my dad. You know, he was super into boxing forever, so he loves the striking aspect. And as soon as there's a takedown and, you know, it's a chess match on the ground, he gets up, gets a beer, or, you know what I mean?
Well, everybody can understand this.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Not everybody understands transitions and submission attempts and things like that. So it took a long time. What was that?
That's what Chris Liebman said during the interview, right?
Oh, yeah. Bare knuckle boxing, you know?
Yep.
So I think that had a lot to do with it. Now people are more aware of what's going on the ground, so they're more able to appreciate it and things like that. So, yeah, first fight, swinging and banging, clicking and clacking heavyweights. Second one, just to show you, hey, even when it does go to the ground, it's not just like, it's not boring when it goes to the ground. Rousimar Palhares versus Alan Belcher. 2012 UFC on Fox 3.
I was gonna say, you're
Diaz
going
versus
back.
Jim Miller. Yeah.
You're going back.
Yeah, dude. Nate Diaz versus Jim Miller 3, third time on Fox. To set the stage, Alan Belcher is just like, for some reason, he's just like an all-American fighter to me. You know, just a jacked white dude. You know, with the Johnny Cash tattoo on his arm. Like, you know
jacked
what I mean?
white dude.
Not like. You remember, well, Jack White Boy was the Brock Lesnar quote.
Yeah, with Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, but Alan Belcher, for me, was always super fun to watch, you know, because he wasn't like an Anderson Silva style striker. He wasn't like a Damian Maia type jiu-jitsu guy. Just a tough as nails fighter who was going to put it on you and could take punishment himself. So super exciting from him. And then Rousimar Palhares was just absolutely dangerous. Like, so dangerous that he got cut, basically, because what he would do is you'd go to the ground, and his leg lock game was so insane that, like, as soon as you go to the ground, that's what he's going towards. And most of the time he would get it, and it does not matter if you tap. It does not matter if the ref is trying to pull him off of you. He will not let go. And for people who don't know, yeah, he's locked onto that leg. He claimed that he didn't understand why, what, but come on, but
Dude,
but this why he was so scary is it's not like he's just choking people out. They pass out, they come back. He's taking people's knees and tearing ligaments in people's knees, ending careers. Yeah, He's ended careers with that. He got cut from the UFC for not letting go of leg locks. So this fight, like I said, swinging and banging in the first fight. This fight is ultra dangerous ground fighting. And it's just, the commentary is one of my favorite fights for the commentary because Joe Rogan is so involved and it's just, oh man, I fucking love this fight. It just shows you how just because it goes to the ground doesn't mean they're dead in the water and it's boring and they're resting. This is a very active grappling fight, and it could end at any second on the ground. Same thing with the first fight, but flip flop. You know what I mean? So yeah, middleweight fight: Alan Belcher versus Rousimar Palhares. That's my second fight.
Nice. I have Mr. Gilbert-Melendez versus Diego Sanchez.
Just bleed.
And I think about Gilbert-Melendez and Diego Sanchez. They're just two guys that were always game. It didn't matter what was on the line. It didn't matter who was fighting. You knew it was going to be an exciting fight. You want to tune in. Right?
Yeah.
Gilbert-Melendez around the end of his career, was more susceptible to leg kicks and But man, when I saw this fight, and again, my dad's somebody that as soon as any grappling is involved, he's like, I'll go get a beer. I'll be right back. Let me know when they stand up, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the fights that I was like, Dad, you got to watch this. This is all you, my man. Because biting down on their mouthpiece, swinging and banging, clicking and clacking. Dude, that might have to be our next shirt. Swinging and banging, clicking and clacking in the back. But, man, and just super back and forth, both game. And I'm going through and I'm thinking about what are some of my favorite fights that I've ever watched. And a lot of the fights that I remember that just really stand out include some of the same people, just with different matchups.
Yeah. Dude, Diego Sanchez is one of them. Yeah.
So
Guida versus Diego Sanchez was crazy. He's had a lot.
Yeah. So if again, newer fans have a hard time understanding the submission, right? The ground game. Mm-hmm. So with the first fight I mentioned, you have a little mixture of both, back and forth grappling. It wasn't lopsided. And with this one here, it's a lot more of boxing that's in there, but just extremely high-paced power punches and just super fun to watch because they're both high energy from beginning to end. They don't slow down. Actually, it starts picking up at the end of the second round and through the third round. It's insane.
The end of the second gets gnarly, where you're just all of a sudden this is one
of them gets dropped, the other one gets dropped, and you're like, what's gonna happen? I don't know. All the way through.
So
so that's
also shout out. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's my second fight on my my ultimate card.
Yeah.
Shout out to who? Who are you giving a shout out to?
Gilbert-Melendez. I thought he's one of the few uncrowned UFC champions. I thought he won the belt against Benson Henderson, and I think his career changed trajectory after losing that fight. But I think he won that fight. So shout out.
Like I said, he's always one of my favorite fighters to watch too. So now we're going to the main
feature prelim bout.
Yeah, the feature prelim bout. So who do you have for this one?
Yeah, so we were talking about this and we decided just UFC fights, no outside organizations.
Not on this one at least.
Not on this one at least. So I thought if I can't pick a pride fight, I'm picking a UFC pride fight
Ooh.
And so now the way I set this up from in my head at least, first fight, heavyweight, swinging, banging, clicking, clacking. You know, you have to pay attention the whole time. You know that all it takes is one. So that's on your mind. Then you watch Alan Belcher versus Rousimar Palhares. You know the ground game isn't a rest period. It's still an active period where things can definitely happen that are dangerous. So now you can appreciate both sides of the game, grappling and striking. And now that you know that it can switch on a flip, you watch two legends. In 2011, UFC 139, Dan Henderson versus Mauricio Shogun Rua. The first time they fought. They had never fought before in Pride, which is crazy. This is a light heavyweight bout. I think it was one of the, if not the first, but one of the first non-title fight 5-round fights. Headlining a card is when they first started switching to, if you were headlining a card, you get 5 rounds, regardless if the belt was on the line. And this is Dan Henderson. I think at this point he's already like 39 years old, maybe even older. Shogun.
I don't know. He's 60 now, so.
Yeah, Shogun is ageless. I think he's 29 in this fight, which is insane to me.
And he's still 29 now.
Yeah, he's basically 29 now. But yeah, man, this is a lot of people consider this one of the greatest UFC fights of all time, and I think seeing the first two fights will make you appreciate what these two fighters go through. And this is, for me, when you really start to appreciate like the human aspect of the sport and like what humans are actually capable of overcoming and achieving. And it's just a back and forth war. That same thing with like I don't want to say too much about it, right? Because I don't want to spoil it, but it's just a war of attrition, and it just really shows you that two people can just put it all on the line and leave it all out there and just put on a fantastic fight and just not give up. You know what I mean?
There's another name, man. Mauricio Shogun Rua, who I think it was the Forrest Griffith versus Rua fight, too, where I was just like, oh, man, that's another really good one. You know, there's just so many good fights, man. Again,
dude,
Shogun, seeing these fighters that show up over and over again.
Yeah, like I told Kevin, I just recently rewatched the 2005 Middleweight Grand Prix in Pride. And I was like, man, if aliens come down and want to like see what we're doing, you know, like they want to learn about us, you show them the Beatles' White Album, and you show them the 2005 Pride Grand Prix where Shogun fucking shows everybody what humanity is. You know what I mean? Shogun's a legend, man. That is
hilarious.
Fucking Pride never die, dude. You know.
The album and Pride 2005. That's awesome. Yep. That's a good pick, man. That's a really good pick. For me, I was thinking about another one where let me give our new casual fans that are trying to learn more about the sport and love the sport, let me give Rich the Casual something that he'll know about that's still fairly recent that he can put names together and say like, oh, I've watched them recently.
I recognize that.
Oh, I continue hearing them. You know what I mean? And for me, that was the Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz dose.
Yeah, I almost put that in the same slot.
Did you? Yeah, because it's not a non-title fight. But still, two really popular names. I mean, two of the biggest names in the sport. It's Conor's arguably the biggest name in combat sports right now. Nate Diaz, no slouch when it comes to popularity. And that first fight where he chokes out Conor was somewhat of a surprise for some folks. Not for you, right? And not to Nate.
Yeah.
Because he said he's not surprised.
Yeah.
But, you know, for Conor McGregor, this was... We could talk about the Eddie Alvarez fight and the performance that Conor McGregor put in. And right now, the talk is, man, Conor McGregor took this loss so well. Nobody takes a loss like Conor McGregor. This is the first time I've seen him do this. After his loss with Nathan, as he calls him.
Yeah.
He took that loss very well, too, man. You know, he knows how to take a loss. And he promised he was going to come back. He asked for this fight again. He asked for that 170 one more time. Right? And they had that rematch. Don't give me that the
It was
smirk.
155 without a weight cut. Let's be real.
Well, yeah, but at 170 is what they came in at.
Mm-hmm.
So, for me, that was one of the smartest fights that Conor has had. Again, not the most impressive performance if you see his performance against Eddie Alvarez, but Conor not necessarily known for his kicks, mixing in the kicks because we know that Nathan does not, does not block any kicks, does not respond well to it, does not check any of them. And the way that he was able to avoid the takedown, he was not, sucked into a ground battle, even though Nate, there was a couple times where he got punched and he says that he let himself fall trying to, coax Conor into coming in.
Fabricio Verdum, yeah.
And Conor stayed back and again fought a very smart fight all the way to the end. People that question Conor's cardio, he showed that he has the ability to go the 5 rounds. Granted, he started getting a little tired, maybe around the third and fourth rounds. And I think it would have been a very different fight had Conor actually, grappled a little more or, clinched more. Because when we saw he started clinching with Nate, in the 5th round, Nate was getting the better of him. But again, just shows that when needing this fight, very smart and, just stick to a specific game plan, he's able to do that.
Yeah.
And again, back and forth, excellent fight, and one where Richard Casual will be able to see those names and say, hey, I know those guys. Let me watch those guys go at it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, too, it's just one of the things that you almost have to check the box to become like a great fighter, right? And that's the ability to like adapt and change your game plan when you see things aren't going well, and just the ability to change your pace. And that's something that, like you said, after the first Conor Nate fight, Conor did pretty well as far as just changing his game and adapting to like people say, you win or you learn, and great
He's
fighters
true to that.
learn,
He's true to that, man. So, all right, we're getting into the main events here, the main card.
So my entry into the main card, I almost just picked like my favorite fights, which a lot of them are just like crazy 5-round wars, and at the same time, if you just watch like 5-round wars back to back, like you're gonna just start to, I think, phase out a little bit and like not really appreciate it as much as you would if it was just like, because those are unicorns, those aren't just like, they don't happen all the time. So if you watch them back to back, they kind of become normal and you're like, okay, yeah, this is the same thing as the last fight I just saw, like, you know what I mean? So coming off of Dan Henderson versus Shogun Rua, I wanted to like sprinkle in a couple more, that are just kind of like palate cleansers after such a dogfight, So my entry into the main event is a lightweight fight. And from 2016, McDonald versus Lineker, UFC Fight Night 91, and it's Lando Vannata making his debut against Tony Fergason, because Tony, going into this fight, he's got the win streak, he's like unbeaten, all this stuff, or not unbeaten, but for a long time unbeaten, looking like the big thing. Probably should be champion, all this stuff, but Conor's doing his thing, and Lando comes in to make his debut against Tony, and going into this fight, it was like, okay, Tony's gonna like wipe the floor with this dude, and then Lando comes in and enters the Matrix, and it's just a classic fight with great grappling, great striking. It's just a fast-paced burst of energy type of fight that just kind of like it's like a nice little like release after watching the Shogun versus Dan Henderson war, and just kind of seeing just like a crazy kind of bananas fight that's not long and dragged out, where you're going to be sitting around and checking your phone halfway through because there's a moment, and it's just glues you to the screen, and you're going to watch a crazy back and forth fight. Just chaos, pure chaos in that fight.
That's a fun one. That's a fun one, man. And for me, What you said something earlier when you were talking about one of the fights where you're saying it's just a display of what the human body can endure, or what
Yeah.
the human can go through. And I think about my fight here that I picked, which is Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard 2.
Dude, this is my favorite fight of all time.
I love this fight, and
Yeah.
When you read about Frankie and what he went through in that fight, and it says there was a ghost piloting me during this fight, because, dude, it was just insane. Yeah. Autopilot going through back and forth. And it's also, when I think about Gray Maynard and Frankie Edgar, it kind of makes me think of like the blue collar, like hardworking American, and so to see these two guys just absolutely go at it, leave everything out there. And for me, like, I had always known about Frankie Edgar since I started watching the UFC. He's been a big name for a while, but this is the one where I was just like, God dang, he's something special, man.
I wrote a paper on him in high school.
This was at the lightweight division, right?
Yeah, he had the belt.
Yeah. So when you think about his current size right now,
yeah, clearly. I mean, this was before lower weight classes. Lightweight was as small as you could get. Frankie Edgar was not a lightweight.
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
absolutely not. But man, wait. I think about what you said. Just somebody being able to push themselves to the limit.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love this fight for that. And
like I said,
another one where there's a lot of slanging and banging, clicking and clacking.
Yep.
I wonder how many times we're gonna say that on this.
I know.
On this episode.
Yeah.
Richard Cashel should just put a little ticker on the bottom every time we say it. Yeah. But again, for me, a must watch for anybody that's getting into mixed martial arts, following UFC, and just MMA in general. So.
Yeah, especially because Frank Yeager's still doing it, man, and people need to put some fucking respect on that man's name. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, and for anybody that's just coming in right now and saying like, okay, this guy's the number 10 ranked featherweight, or
he's fighting next weekend.
Yeah, he is. But to see what he's done up till now, like, it's not like he just dropped in the scene, man. This guy's been around and doing it at a very high level for a very long time.
I also, again, don't think he lost his belt at lightweight, which, funnily enough, is the same person who I thought Gilbert beat for the belt. But whatever. It's no bias.
But whatever.
I actually like that. I like that guy, but and that's funny that's your fight, because there's a moment in that fight in the second round where it's gives me goosebumps every time I watch it, even though I know it's coming, just because I just remember the first time I watched that fight. And there's like a turning point in that fight where you're just like, how is a human being capable of this? It's insane. And a very similar thing happens in my next fight, which is old school. Super. Ooh. I didn't want to go too old school for some of these because, again, if we're just showing someone who's new, they're not going to understand the legends of the past, But 2005, UFC 52, Liddell versus Couture 2.
Okay.
There was a championship fight. The welterweight championship fight was also that night, and it was Matt Hughes versus Frank Trigg 2, the rematch. And this is one of my go-to. I've showed this fight to people numerous times who don't watch the sport, just to show them like this is something that even can happen in this sport. It's just like I said, the turning point in the Edgar versus Maynard 2 fight. The turning point in this fight is one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen. And when it happens, this was before huge arenas, in the UFC. This is not a huge, I think it's at the Hard Rock, it's not like a massive venue. But when the turning point happens in this fight, the crowd noise, you can barely even hear the commentary. Like you can't, it's so hard to hear what they're saying and they're screaming because the crowd is just, I mean, it must have been, and you can see Dana running around, like Dana's freaking out about how crazy this fight is. And I think up until like 3 or 4 years ago, he still said this was his favorite fight of all time. But again, just to show like what a human being is capable of, and just again, another one where it forces you to say, oh, with these fights, I have to pay attention at every second because anything can happen. Like people say that all the time, but it really can. Sometimes that gets put to the test and people show up, So Matt Hughes versus Frank Trigg 2, UFC 52.
I love that one. So I told you, I started like a group on Facebook. It's called MMA Talk. MMA Talk Community by Story of the Fight podcast. And on there, a gentleman by the name of Chris Whitlow mentions, some of his favorite fights, and one of the fights on there is Matt Hughes versus Frank Trigg 2.
Dude,
so shout out over there to Mr. Chris Whitlow for sure. Socrates was commenting on that as well, and Socrates mentioned Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler, which was another fun one. So a lot of good stuff going on there. So if anybody wants to chat.
Yeah, that was also very close around the same time. Was that on the same card? That was like UFC 51 maybe? The one right before that?
Oh, I don't even remember.
I don't remember
exactly.
But it's around the same time. Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler.
Yeah. But if anybody wants to talk fights, MMA Talk Community by Story of the Fight on Facebook, join the group. So for me, the next one is a recent fight.
Ooh.
Yeah, pretty recent. As recent as last year. And it's Zhang Weili versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Dude, I absolutely love that fight.
Yeah, let me stop you right there because that's also my next fight. So you take the reins on this one. So we both picked for our third fight on the main card, Zhang Weili.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is my second fight. This is my second fight on the main card. So.
Well, you know what?
But now we know what your third one is. Either way.
Well, because what am I going to do? Announce it like it's a fresh new fight and then...
No, I get it. I get it. With Joanna Jędrzejczyk and the history that she has of just being an absolute monster. And when we think about the folks that she had fought, and for the longest time, they were thinking that Joanna is one of the best female fighters that we had ever seen, right? Mm-hmm. Extremely dominant in the strawweight division, and I think about like what she did to Carla Esparza, for example. She's piecing her up. Next level striking.
Yeah.
For a woman champion, right? Dude, she was just mauling women back and forth. And then here comes Zhang Weili, with this power from China, man.
Yeah.
And I was really curious to see how this fight would go because we have the new champion, Joanna champion, coming in. I want to see what Joanna champion has left in the tank, and I want to see what Zhang Weili is really all about. And boy, did they deliver, man. Boy, did they deliver. Because Zhang wasn't necessarily trying to take Joanna down and trying to avoid the strike game. She fought Joanna in her own game, which was just clicking and clacking, slanging and banging. And dude, just back and forth. And when there's some casual fans that are like, well, I don't really like watching the women fight. Yeah. And I would put this fight in front of them and tell them, dude, they throw down harder than most of the men that you see on a lot of these cards that you're watching. One put it all out on the line, left it all in the octagon. And it's not like one was doing more damage than the other, man. None of them walked away from this unscathed.
They're both pretty battered.
Yeah, and it's not like it was just like I think about the GilbertMelendez fight and Diego Sanchez fight. It was fun to watch. I wouldn't say it was the most technical fight in the world.
There's brawls and there's technical brawls.
This one was a technical brawl, man.
Yeah, really, really.
I freaking love this fight. And again, something that I would want to put in front of a lot of newer fans to mixed martial arts and saying, hey, you have to make sure that you watch our women fighters as well because there's a lot of amazing women that do some amazing things out there. So, like I said, this is my next fight too. So my main card starts, right? It's Tony Fergason versus Lando Vannata. Crazy quick fight. Matt Hughes versus Frank Trigg 2. Crazy quick fight. Just to kind of cleanse the palate of the war of Shogun versus Hendo. And then you start this fight, and it's, like you said, it's just a back and forth like war. And Joanna is so technical. And a split decision, this one. So, I mean, it's not some people say Joanna got it. Some people say Zhang should have won it.
I say Joanna got it, but whatever. I also might be biased there, to be honest. I still am a huge Joanna fan. So But like you said, there's still a lot of people who say that like, oh, I usually skip the women's MMA fights, or oh, they don't really carry much power. There's no threat to finish. And then it's like, okay, look at Zhang Weili's last fight before this. Knocked out Andrade, who is a tank. Someone that pushed Joanna 5 rounds and
look at Andrade
took a ton of
versus
punishment.
Karolina
Karakovic, yeah.
Dude,
and
she
then
dropped her too.
Or Chikagian, like dude.
Or Chikagian.
So
yeah.
and Zhang Weili took her out violently, and then you look at, like you said, Joanna versus Esparza or Penne, and like some of these other fighters where she just brutalizes them with just crazy vicious volume. Yeah. And dude, her striking is just, like I said, vicious as hell, man, because she cuts these angles and is like in and out and just like scraping you up with these shots. So yeah, this
and
was,
efficient, very efficient.
yeah,
it
doesn't really get tired.
I love watching.
Oh yeah,
Ioana's.
that too. No crazy loop, like you said. There's brawls, there's technical brawls, and this was a very technical fight, back and forth, and just shows. I mean, best female fight of all time, in my opinion. And
ooh.
I mean, I don't think anything's even close, to be honest. This fight is crazy. One fight of the year by pretty much everybody. Also,
including us.
Yeah, probably in the top 10 of greatest. I mean, definitely top 15, maybe top 10 of greatest fights of all time, to be honest.
This fight should go down in the UFC Hall of Fame.
Dude, Dana said anytime it pops on, he ends up just being sidetracked. Just recently, there was he was in like fighter meetings or like in some meeting, an important meeting, and they had a TV in the corner, and it was like fight. You know how Fight Pass just does like the constant like 24/7 fights. That fight came on, and he's like, dude, I found myself like just watching the fight and not even paying attention to the meeting. Like that's just amazing. It's crazy. So yeah, this is where we're starting to get into some of the great
thinking
fights.
About that, how do you top that? That's crazy. So that was your number 3. Let me tell you my number 3.
Yeah, you're up.
Welterweight bout, Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald 2.
Uh-huh.
By the look of your face, this is coming up here pretty soon for you as well. Okay, so I mean, this is good because when we talk about like a Rich the Casual, and I'm sure right now in the background he's writing down these names, he's taking notes,
he's downloading right now.
He's downloading them right now, very legally, and trying to find a time to fit them between Return of the King and the Two Towers or whatever. And no,
I can't even believe you just no.
Okay, well, whatever. So, so it's good because with these fights that we both seeing eye to eye on, he might just forward to these fights first and then trickle down to the other fights that we're talking about. But when we talk about a just bleed moment, there's a moment that's just etched in my brain for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly what round it is, but you have Robbie Lawler's lips split wide open, just blood going down his face. You have Rory McDonald's nose busted, almost unrecognizable from the time he started the fight to right now.
Smashed into his face.
Smashed. And the round's over, and dude, I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it. And they just don't go back to their corners and decide to just stay there and stare each other down.
Yeah.
And I felt like this was like a mental war within the fight.
Dude.
It's not even God.
It's not even just that. At the end of that round, it's kind of one of those turning point moments. And man, like you said, they're both busted up. And at the end of the round, Rory lands a clean combo. And the round ends, and as it's ending, Robbie, with a split lip, blood all over his face, blood all over him, he turns to the side and spits. Basically, like, spits at that combo. Like, that ain't shit on me. You know what I mean? And you can see him spit, and it's just a spray of blood. And he just spits it and then stares him down, and they're standing, like, this close to each other while Big John is trying to, like, separate them. And they're just not moving. And it's like, dude, you got to go back to the corner. You guys are fucked up. Like, if you're Big John... you're Big John, you're like, oh, fuck, what do I do? You know, like, dude, it was just one of the most intense moments I could remember ever witnessing in any combat sports. Yeah, Robbie Lawler's got a few of those. I don't want to give too much away from this fight other than
This is a must watch for anybody
Yeah.
that's just getting into mixed martial arts, into MMA, into UFC, you gotta watch this. It's an amazing fight.
How about this was the co-main? This was the co-main on the Conor Mendez card, and after this fight, it was like Conor's walking out, and at that point, I was just like,
where do we go from here?
What could we ever watch? That's good. Like what are we doing?
That was a good fight too, though.
And the Conor Mendez fight was great.
It was a good fight too.
It's like
but
it
was
comedians when they talk about like going up after like Dave Chappelle or like Bill Burr or something, and they're just like, oh. Like imagine being in the back and watching that fight and being like, I gotta go do this. Like
dude,
in like 10 minutes, I'm next. Fuck, dude. Absolutely crazy.
I love that fight. All right, so what's your co-main event?
Yeah. So my co-main is a very similar fight. A very similar fight as far as like pacing and turning points and all this stuff. It's UFC 236, Holloway versus Poirier 2, 2019, Israel Adesanya versus Kelvin Gastelum.
Okay.
Middleweight title.
This is my co-main event as well, so
Perfect.
have at it.
Yeah. So a lot of the same things can be said for this fight. Going into this fight, Izzy, he's the champ, and he's hasn't been tested once. You know, he's been knocked out in kickboxing and stuff, but that's basically a different person for a lot of people. So, and as far as the UFC goes, pretty much unscathed in his entire career at this point. Very reminiscent of Anderson Silva with the striking. Fought Anderson Silva, I think, was it the fight before? No, not before, but
a couple fights before,
a little bit earlier. Yeah. But just the way he picks his shots, he's almost untouchable. And when he does land, he lands with power. And it's like that deceptive power where he'll slip a shot and pop you, and it's just, you're done, right? The Derek Brunson fight was basically that.
Yep.
So you don't really know much about a fighter until they're put to the test. And that's one of the things I always look for in prospects, right? Is I'm waiting for them to get checked to see how they respond, right? And Kelvin Gastelum has been a dog his entire career. And a wrestler who fell in love with his hands once he realized he had power, right? And arguably should be fighting at welterweight, say all that stuff, right? Fights at middleweight, though, becomes a contender, fights for the belt, and man, they just put it on each other. And it's one of those fights where it seems like it's going a very clear way at the beginning, and then there's a turning point, and you're like, oh shit, how is this person going to respond? Because we've never seen it. And in that fifth round, right before the round starts.
Oh, don't say it. I'm going to get goosebumps again right now.
Yeah. The camera, every round, the camera looks at one, looks at the other, then they start. When it goes over to Izzy, you can see him say, I'm ready to die in here, or something to that extent. And you fucking believe it based off the fight up until this point. And there's some of these fights, some fights are even, some fights are even going into the last round. And those are exemplified in 5-round fights, right? It matters in 3-round fights, but man, when they have 15 minutes already behind them, or whatever, 20 minutes behind them already, there's 5 minutes left, and they're both exhausted, both have been tested physically, mentally, and at that point it's even, most likely, and then you get to see, all right, this one's for all the marbles, who's going to go out there and because at that point it's not just about who's the most skilled. At that point it's, again, it comes down to human nature, all this stuff. So this fight is one of those fights that really showcases that, and it solidifies Israel Adesanya as one of the all-time great champions. You know what I mean? For me, at least.
I agree.
This 100%. Is probably the best middleweight fight, title middleweight fight of all time, most likely. Just crazy fight.
It was just a straight test of will, right? And who I wouldn't say who wanted more, because man, Kelvin Gastelum is an absolute dog. Mm-hmm. Israel Adesanya, an absolute dog, and he proved that in this fight. And it makes me think about like one of my favorite boxers of all time, and a lot of people's favorite is Mike Tyson. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember exactly what interview it was in, but he talks about not necessarily considering himself to be like one of the greatest of all time in boxing.
Yeah.
And God, who was it? So they asked him, what would it take for you to consider yourself that? And he said, dying in there.
Yeah.
He goes, what do you mean? He's like, dying in that ring. And I was like, God damn it. And when he says that, like, he, straight face, looking him straight in the eye, and he fucking meant it, man. Like, if I die in that ring, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Like, I'll go there. And when Israel Adesanya, like you said, says, I think he says something like, it's okay, I'm ready to die, or something.
Yeah.
And when I just remember the feeling I got when he said that.
Gnarly, dude.
And I just look around like, did anybody else just read this guy's lips right now? Am I the only one that saw this? Because this dude's ready to die in there, and the way he went out there, he was.
Yeah.
Oh my!
Yeah, definitely.
Until the last moment of that fight, it was anybody's fight. So again, no spoilers. Richard Casual, got to go through and watch this. But this is an absolute all-time one of the best fights ever. In the history of mixed martial arts. So.
And it's one of those things like I'm ready to die in there. Like it sounds like such like macho bullshit, but like, dude, when you see the rounds leading up to that, your ego isn't present anymore. You don't get to say some shit to like look cool. Like that's all gone. You're stripped down at this point. This is like, it's real as shit, man. Like that's one of the greatest moments of in UFC history, really.
And it's funny we talk about this because the last couple fights we just mentioned with Robbie Lawler and McDonald with the face off in the middle of the octagon, just both bloodied up after that exchange, with Israel Adesanya seeing what him and Gastelum had gone up to that point, and him saying that he's willing to die in there. Like these are just small iconic moments that just you'll carry with you in your memory for the rest of your life.
Yeah, same. And so, am I moving on to my main event now?
Let's do it. Main event.
Or have you done your co-main? Our co-mains are the same.
Both of us was co-main was the same.
So mine has been talked about already. My main event is Robbie Lawler versus McDonald 2.
Yeah, I figured because that's the face you made when I said that. So
yeah. So I won't spend too much time on it. Obviously, we talked about it already, but a couple other things with this fight. Robbie Lawler at this point, there was hatred for the lay and pray, right? We had just gotten out of the era of the Greg Jacksons. We're not here to put on exciting fights. We're here to win and defend belts and get the W by any means necessary. People were starting to really understand what judges look for in the fight. So people were getting takedowns and controlling, just like in guard, not really threatening with anything, just doing just enough to not get stood up and separated. And the first time that Robbie Lawler fought Rory McDonald, it was a very close fight. And you could tell that was kind of Rory's game plan, was the lay and pray, right? GSP had a ton of success with it when he moved to Jackson's, or was working with Jackson's in his career. And Rory obviously trained with GSP at TriStar. And a lot of people were pegging him as like the next George St. Pierre. He was the George St. Pierre that trained MMA from the start, right? He was like the first of that kind of crop. And that first fight, he tried it, he was trying to lay and pray on Robbie, and Robbie just, man, that guy's, his willpower and just like his ability to just dig deep and just get people off of him and just put it on them in those moments. I mean, and he did that in that fight, and he won that fight. And I was really nervous in that fight, in the first one, because of the decision. I thought, man, if Rory outpointed him with this lay and pray bullshit, I didn't like Rory at this point in his career. He changed his tune, obviously, but at this point, I was rooting for Robbie so bad, and I was like, man, did he do enough? And they gave it to him. I was like, damn, he skirted that one, because, I mean, he did just enough, to put it on him after the lay and pray. Then he fights Johnny Hendricks for the vacant belt. Johnny Hendricks wins. It was a crazy fight, another one that people should watch. Crazy fight, a war. And then they fought again. They rematched, right? Johnny Hendricks had the belt. Robbie Lawler's challenging. I think, right? And in this fight, it was a war in the first couple rounds, and then Johnny Hendricks was like, I'm a really good wrestler. What am I doing? and started trying to take Robbie down. And it got to the point where in the 5th round, and it's like, man, this looks like it's getting away. Like Johnny Hendricks is going to just control this guy to a decision and win this fight. And that's a shame. And at the end of that fight, it's one of my favorite sequences ever, is Johnny Hendricks. He would shoot in on the double and bury his head in between the legs of Robbie. So Robbie couldn't hit him. He wasn't able to get him off of him, and the crowd's booing and Johnny Hendricks doesn't give a shit. He's getting they're getting separated by the ref. He just immediately shoots again, and it's just like, man, you could see the frustration on Robbie, just like, get the fuck off me, like, let's fight, you know. And with like a minute left in that round, Robbie drops to a knee and starts elbowing Johnny Hendricks in the side, and the crowd's cheering, right, because they're like, finally, like, something's happening. And you could tell it's hurting Hendricks. And you can hear Robbie Lawler over the crowd in the commentary screaming with every elbow that he's throwing. And it's not the bullshit people who are like, ha, ha. It's like, he's like fucking putting everything in. It's like when you watch like Scherzer or like a high level pitcher in the major league when they're throwing their fastball and you can hear them grunting every time they release the ball. It's because they're putting everything. That's not something they're trying to do. You know, it's just coming out of them because they're putting everything in their body. You make a sound. And that's Robbie Lawler in this moment. And he's just screaming, landing these elbows. And then finally, Johnny Hendricks is like, I got to get the fuck out of here. He bails on the takedown, stand up, and there's like 10 seconds left. And Robbie just fucking swarms him. He's like jumping at him, throwing kicks to the body, throwing punches, and Hendricks is just covering up. And you can see Robbie, you can hear him and see in his face, he's screaming. Like, it's the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. So the reason I bring that up is because at that point, I was like, Robbie is immune to lay and pray. You know, people try and lay and pray. He fucking muscles them off of him and goes to war, you know, because he realizes I have to, because on scorecards, I'm going to lose this fight. I have to try to put him out. And going into this fight, I was expecting a very similar game plan from Roy McDonald from the first fight, because he almost got it. I was expecting him to come in, shoot for takedowns, try and control Robbie, and it was going to be one of those fights. And instead, they just dug down and they fucking went to war. And it's probably top 5, maybe top 3 greatest fights of all time for me. And one of the few fights that can go next after Israel versus Gastelum. And it's just, like you said, we said a ton about it when you brought it up, but yeah, one of the craziest fights I've ever seen. Just the pure, raw, just bleed comes out, and it's just fucking, it's just crazy. You won't get anything like this in any other sport, you know? You just won't.
Nope. That's a great pick, man. Great pick. For me, my main event was John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson.
Yeah, this almost made my list too.
I mean, when we talk again about a tactical brawl,
yeah,
this is it.
Obviously, the first one, not the second one.
Not the second one. The second one didn't go too good for Gustafsson. The first one, though, some people say that Alexander Gustafsson won that one, you know, and then it's a back and forth fight. But man, when we talk about the crazy John Jones at that time, and if I remember correctly, this is where on his Instagram, the night before at like 3 a.m, he posted a picture of him and Steve Aoki partying it up at a club. And this is the night before this championship bout against Gustafsson, right? So, I mean, I don't mean to spoil it, but you know what? John Jones is still undefeated. The only loss he has on there is the DQ. So I guess you kind of know who already won that one. But going into that 5th round, a lot of people felt very similar to the Adesanya versus Gastelum, like it could go either way. And John Jones showed, I mean, they call them the championship rounds for a reason. Yeah. You know, it's not just the fact that championship fights have those 2 additional rounds, but it's the fact that champions are able to pull it off and show more will and just grit it out in these last 2 rounds. I see what you did there. So that 5th round, for me, solidified John Jones being one of the best mixed martial artists to ever do it. And Will, you know, I'm not the biggest John Jones fan.
Yeah.
You know, I know that there was recently a video of him like giving kids some fucking autographs or something like that in front of his house. For me, it was just super weird to see John Jones be the one to upload this on his page, and then SportsCenter or
Look at me.
ESPN shares it. Like, yeah, exactly. Like, look at me, I could be a nice guy. And then ESPN's like, you know what? You are a nice guy. Let me share it so everybody else sees you're a nice guy. So like,
And then a week later, he's choking a stripper or something.
he doesn't choke strippers. He just shoots guns outside the club after visiting the strippers.
He choked a stripper.
He did?
Allegedly.
Allegedly. So,
Yeah. The list is long.
there's no doubting just how good John Jones is inside the octagon.
Yeah.
And when I think about the fact that this is John Jones that had been up all night, probably coked out of his mind, probably did a little Molly, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe a couple dick pills before. You know, and I don't know. Did he have picograms, you know, flowing through his veins? Maybe. But the back and forth again in this fight, technical brawl between two light heavyweights is just one of my favorite fights. And I continue hearing stories. I think Brandon Shaw tells a story about this fight because he was, I guess he fought in this card or something like that, and he was in the back, and he sees John Jones in the stretcher going through the hallways. And he's like, hey, man, great fight. And that he could barely like hold his arm up to like give a thumbs up. You see the picture of Gustafsson and John Jones in
Both
the hospital.
of them, yeah.
And, man, they just left it all in the octagon that night. And this is why, for me, at this weight class, the power that they bring, and still both of them move like they're middleweights. It was just one of the most beautiful displays of combat sports I had seen like ever. So,
it's also a lot of people say John Jones is the greatest of all time, right? And that's obviously debatable and it will always be, but he is always one of the people that gets brought up in that conversation, right? There's basically like 5 people, and he's always included. And this is probably his best performance. So if you want to see one of the all-time greats, if you want to see them in their best performance, you know, this is, you know,
while he's cooked out of his mind.
Yeah, it's like if you're going to watch Muhammad Ali, you're going to watch Sonny Liston, you know, so this is that fight, basically. This is his peak, you know.
And if you think about it, Gustafsson hasn't been the same since, man. We think about some fighters that have gone through some absolute wars and then are just kind of a shell of their former self. You know, you think about JDS versus Cain Velasquez. I think about Gustafsson in this one here. And who knows, we might be talking about Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje a few fights down the road.
Justin Gaethje does that to people. Look at, like we were talking about earlier, rest in peace James Vick, you know what I mean? He didn't die, but...
Oh, my God.
I mean, 9-2, fights Gaethje. He's lost 5 in a row.
He takes your chin away. He takes your chin away and your soul. So, all these fights I listed, a lot of my favorite fights I definitely point new fans towards so that they get a better understanding of just how exciting mixed martial arts is. But they understand, for them to understand, like just, like you said, what the human body is capable of. The spirit that a lot of these fighters carry, the stuff they go through. I just absolutely love the sport, man.
You want to know something kind of dumb?
Yeah.
And like a little bit embarrassing, but I used to when I had my heavy bag at my dad's place we had it in the garage, right? I would put on Jones versus Gustafsson 1 and just do 5-minute rounds, just trying to do everything that John did, just to kind of push that pace. And that was like the benchmark for like
how hard was that?
It was hard as fuck. Very hard.
Yeah,
very hard.
That's not embarrassing. I thought you were gonna tell a better story.
Well, you know.
Fuck, now I want something embarrassing. You're like, yeah, I used to do that last week.
No, I haven't done that in a long time.
No, that's awesome, man. And so, Rich the Casual, do you think you'll be able to get some of these fights in here pretty soon?
Yeah, I wonder if I can find some of these videos and link them up in the show notes. Or will we get arrested?
Most probably, I don't think any of these are going to be like free anywhere, but I can share my my Fight Pass subscription if you want to watch some of these. I don't think they really care about IPs on Fight Pass.
Yeah, I think I want to watch that Joanna and Jacek one.
Joanna
You gotta watch all
Jacek,
of them,
yes.
though.
Yeah, you do. He's like, nah.
Oh man.
All right, well, this was fun.
Yeah, dude, this was hard.
It was hard, but it was fun because we live in the now all the time. Everything's about what's happening right now, right? So everybody's talking about Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier and the calf kick. And, like I said, going online and just different Facebook groups that I'm part of and conversations that I see, it's just all like, Conor McGregor's the best. Habib sucks. No, Habib's the best. He made Conor tap. And that's all these conversations are. And it's like, dude, just appreciate what these two guys are doing. Yeah. Appreciate the stardom that Conor McGregor has brought to the sport. Appreciate the greatness who is Habib Nurmagomedov. Appreciate and go back and see some of these fights and appreciate what has gotten us to this point, man. For me, it was a lot of fun just thinking about those past fights.
Yeah, it's also, the sport is frustrating in the sense that I was telling Zach, my cadet that I work with, he doesn't really, he listens to all these, so shout out to Zach. But he doesn't watch a ton of fights, right? But I was telling him, everybody, it just goes, comes with the territory with sports, right? People watch sports, they watch football, they watch baseball. Somebody loses, they talk shit about them for, oh, you see, like, dude, they fucking suck. The Orioles fucking, Chris Davis can't hit a home run anymore. They gave him all this money. Like, whatever. It's just a game, right? So they can do that. But that translates into MMA also, and it pisses me off sometimes because, like, it's one thing to talk shit about a wide receiver who dropped a bunch of passes. You know what I mean? It's one thing to talk shit about a baseball player who struck out 4 times in one night, It's different to talk shit about someone who got knocked out. Yep. You know what I mean? And it's like, dude, they put it all on the line. There's no... That wide receiver can say, oh, you know what? My fucking quarterback couldn't throw the ball right. It's not my fault.
Throwing it behind me in front of me, yeah.
Yeah, the batter who struck out 5 times or 4 times, he can be like, dude, I was facing fucking Trevor Bauer. Like, what do you want from me? You know what I mean? Or he can say, there's all these distractions, but in MMA, there's none of that. It's all on you. It's all on the person you're fighting. So the fact that they get out there and they're wearing basically in their underwear in front of thousands of people on national TV. Conor versus Dustin was 1.7 million pay-per-view buys or something like that, just on ESPN Plus.
Wow.
And that doesn't include the UK where they get it on BT Sport and all these other places. To put yourself out there.
Does that include the people that had to buy it twice because it wasn't working?
It also doesn't include the people who may or may not have watched it illegally. So millions and millions of people are watching this fight live. Yeah, yep. Allegedly. And for people to just come out and talk shit about, dude, why wasn't he checking the calf kicks? And I'm not even a huge Conor fan, right? I'm more so now that he's starting to be back to the more respectful kind of self that he was. I mean, he would always talk shit, but you could tell that underneath it was a level of respect, and then it kind of got away from him a little bit, probably some outside influences in that. But it seems like he's on the right path for me at least, to start becoming a fan again. It's like the dude got knocked out in front of his wife, in front of millions of people, and people are gonna talk shit about how he already beat him once. How come he's not checking the calf? Like, it's just like, it just pisses me off, So people, that's the one downside with the sport, unfortunately. But it is nice to talk about.
And that's
these
because
fights.
A lot of these folks haven't gone through and watched all these fights that we have to really appreciate what has gotten us to this point and what it takes for these fighters to get to that point, right? So
yeah, definitely.
Hopefully we're able to help some lost souls out, Will.
Yeah.
I did want to give a shout out to Jared Pretorius, who is now following us. It is. Jared Pretorius now following us on Instagram. Also now a subscriber on the YouTube. So shout out to Jared.
Thanks, dude. Comment. Yeah, also, that's one of the things with this type of video. It's like, I mean, you know how many fights I wrote down that didn't make the cut for some reasons, but not because they were bad fights. It's just because the flow that I was trying to make with the card, So like, there's a lot of fights that weren't even talked about in this video that a lot of people are like, how the fuck do you not include Bigfoot Silva versus Mark Hunt? You know what I mean? Like, there's so many fights that I would like to see people put in the comments, you know, like what fights we definitely should have included that we didn't, or just like what are your go-tos to show people who don't watch the sport, you know? So
Yep.
there's so many.
And we love it. We love interacting. Like anytime anybody comments on either Instagram or on YouTube, it's always just us going back and forth after that, right? So
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Well, do you have anything else?
No.
I don't have anything else either. It was fun. Thanks everybody for listening to Story of the Fight.